This particular sequence we call the Infant Series, and it's the least yin of all the series, ironically. The premise of the series is to gently work the spine in primarily a horizontal, not taxing or fighting against gravity orientation. Retracing the movements of an infant, learning to first move its limbs and then turn itself over onto its belly and eventually work itself slowly into a standing position. So the Infant Series is a very gentle, nice, pleasant way to warm up the body. It's a nice way to prepare for perhaps another yin, deeper yin practice, or quite frequently we use this practice to prepare ourselves for doing a strong yang practice. So the Infant Series. If you would relax on your backs. How the infant starts life on the cradle. And first, leg cradle. If you'd bring your right leg up, we call this cradling the knee, cradling the leg. You're cradling your knee in towards your chest. And there's no exact one way to cradle the leg in properly. Sometimes you cradle it across the body slightly, sometimes directly into the rib cage. Sometimes you cradle your leg slightly across the midline of the body, hugging and pulling, not bouncing or being vigorous or aggressive, but just feel your way into the hip. Feel your way into any muscular restrictions or tensions. This is your first movement of the day. Perhaps you're sore and cold or tired from the previous day's activities. And in all these series, you can also bring your head up, engaging the muscles of your front of your throat, your neck, and your stomach as a gentle initiation of movement and strength that you will need for later. So the spine needn't be passive while you're cradling your hip. And then change sides, please. Cradling the left knee or left thigh, hugging your knee. People adapt different grips because of different flexibilities and proportions. Some people choose to lace both fingers, both hands around the knee. Other people will loop an elbow over the knee to hug the knee in tight or aggressive. Some people take different hand positions on the upper and lower part of their leg. The grip is incidental. Whatever feels comfortable and most natural to you to manipulate your own body. And once again, the two sides of the body are always different. So don't be in a rush. Move and feel. You can bring your head up and engage the muscles of the torso, gently preparing the movements of the upper spine and shoulders in the middle of your back. Even while working your hip, your spine need not be completely passive. And then change again, this time both legs. The biggest variation here is, do you cross your ankles or have your feet parallel? Do you hold your knees tight together or your knees wide apart? All of these are really up to you and the individual preferences. There are so many different body types and skeletal predispositions. You needn't limit yourself to any one way to exercise your hip joints, to stretch gently your lower spine and your sacrum. Take the opportunity during these postures to move or massage, rolling and pressing your bones and your muscles against the floor. It's a chance to feel the backside of the body, where we tend to be the most ignorant of how we're put together. And again, whenever you wish to, you can bring your head up off the floor, stretching the back of your neck and stretching your upper spine gently in preparation for deeper stretches that are to come. Now, to come down out of this posture, we introduce again the hinge movement, a strong yang movement. You bring your hands under your hips and bring your head up. That engages the muscles of the abdomen. And slowly bring your legs down. And before your legs touch the floor, hovering a few inches above, take just a couple breaths there, strengthening the core of the body, stabilizing the lower spine. And then relax and let the legs come all the way down. The hinge is a nice counter because it's a very strong yang stabilization of the spine, whereas the other movements we do in our yin practice, we're trying to traction and gently pull those regions. So alternating between a yin pulling and stretching of the spine and the pelvis and a yang engaging of the muscles to stabilize the spine and the pelvis is a very nice way to train the nerves of the body. Now draw again both knees up at the same time and twist both knees over to your right. The arms are usually extended. This helps to stabilize the upper spine while the lower spine and the pelvis twist to the side. Now you're just letting your spine slowly relax. Again, the assumption might be this is the very first movement of the day, or you're stiff, or you're cold, or you're tired, or you're all of the above. So you needn't be in a rush. Typically in yin practices, the first 30 seconds, the first 60 seconds, the body resists, and actually is slightly tense. And then somewhere in that timeline, the body starts to relax. So it is normal after you've been 30 to 60 seconds in a pose to feel like you could effortlessly take the pose slightly deeper. If and when this occurs, there's no need to inhibit yourself. Go ahead and take your body slightly deeper if you need to draw your knees a little higher or push the upper leg a little further over. There's no need to be absolutely still. There is no absolute yin in real life. There's a subtle blend of yin and yang. And then slowly unwind, please. Bring both knees back to center and drop both knees together over to your left side. The arms again extended to the sides help to stabilize the upper spine. And the two sides of the body are most assuredly different. Sometimes the differences are minor. Sometimes there is a big difference between the two sides. Sometimes these differences are simple muscular tensions, and we can slowly ease our ways through them. At other times, the differences are more due to skeletal predispositions. These will never go away, these asymmetries, but we're trying to minimize their effects on our body. Breathing is easy and normal. Every once in a while, the energies of the body bring you to a state where you want to hold your breath. You needn't force the rhythm of your breathing. If at any time you feel calm and relaxed and you wish to stop your breathing in an unforced way, do so. At the other extreme, if you ever want to take a deep, strong breath and hold your breath, then do so. In a practice like this, it isn't so much dictating how the breath should be done, so much as it is, what does your body want to do? How are the postures affecting the breath? And slowly bring both knees back up to center. And once again, the hinge. Hands under the pelvis, head comes up, engaging the abdominal muscles, and slowly lower the legs at an awkward and strenuous angle close to the floor. Pause just for a breath or two before relaxing completely, lowering the legs and relaxing your head and your neck. Now we take it just a little deeper. The stirrup. Draw first the right leg up, catch hold of your foot, the instep or heel of the foot, and press and pull that knee down and out towards the floor. Again, everyone's grip is slightly different. Some people grab with one hand. Some people grab with two hands. Some people grab the outside edge of the foot. Some people grab the inside edge of the foot. The grip is not the primary focus. Different flexibilities and proportions. People feel comfortable doing different things. What is important is to work the hip range of motion deeper than before. And what might not be obvious is that by engaging the straight leg, you can swing your pelvis to different positions. Holding the straight leg foot off the floor can affect the muscles of the pelvis and the thigh slightly differently. So you don't want to be preoccupied only with the leg that you're grabbing and holding on to. The ultimate stretch in this is to get both legs straight. This is not in the range of everyone's flexibilities, but for those who do have the flexibilities in their hamstrings and their groin, is a pleasant, unforced way to get that first deep, strong opening through the meridians of the legs and the thighs. And again, slowly release the limb. And bend the left leg up, the stirrup on the left side. Taking hold of the left foot with whatever grip feels comfortable to you. One hand, both hands, grabbing the inside edge of the foot, grabbing the outside edge of the foot. The idea is to work that hip and knee closer to the floor. In the cradle, we're pulling it into the torso of the body, but in the stirrup, we bring that limb to the outside of the axis of the body. So there's a freer range of motion and a greater stretching of the musculature. Remember that you might engage the straight leg of the body to anchor or stabilize your pelvis or to swing the pelvis to a slightly different position. You don't want to be robotic and prescribed in your practice. The two sides of your body are different anyway. You want to follow the tensions of the body and move yourself in an intuitive way that feels good, comfortable, relaxed, and unforced. We want to be unforced and uncontrived as you reach for the limit of your extensions on this first movement of the day. And again, slowly release the limb. And this time draw both legs up. Catch hold of the insteps or the heels of both feet. And once again, it can be from the outside or from the inside. Pulling both knees in and up, lifting the tailbone off the floor as you do so, stretches the sacrum and the lower spine. You can roll your pelvis up as high as you feel comfortable to do. And don't forget that you can rock left and or right, massaging the spine against the floor. You need not stay vertical. In fact, sometimes staying vertical inhibits the free motion that is possible if you exaggerate dropping to the left and then alternating with dropping to the right. After manipulating your body in any natural way with knees bent, the idea being to stretch the lower spine and the pelvis more than the groin, then you make it a leg stretch. Taking a comfortable grip, extend the legs. And once again, this type of flexibility is not within everyone's range, but whatever you do feel comfortable with, extend and engage the muscles of the thighs. And once you're engaging your muscles, remember you're by definition engaging in a yang practice. So tensing and squeezing the muscles, engaging the muscles of your stomach and your torso and your legs is perfectly legitimate. There is no absolute yin. It's a combination of playing yin to the bones and yang to the muscles. And now finally, gather your legs back in towards your chest, bending your knees, and hinge. Hands under the pelvis to help stabilize. Bring the chin up to stabilize the torso, and slowly, a strong and powerful movement, bringing your legs down extended very close to the floor. And at some awkward angle to the floor, take just a few breaths before releasing the tension, lowering the feet, and relaxing. We come now to the real, true, strong yin pose for the first time. The postures up to now have been necessitating an engagement and a movement of the muscles, which is good to move the qi into the blood and to prepare the body. This posture, however, is going to be much more yin in its nature, trying to yield and stress the tissues of the spine. It's called twisted roots, a deep twisting of the lumbar spine and pelvis. So if you would, bring both your legs up and cross your left leg over your right. No need to cross the ankles, but the left leg goes over the right, and you twist and drop both of your legs over to the right side. Now your arms are meant to be aids to the pose, and there are two ways in which they do this. Sometimes you can use your arms to grab and pull your legs to a favored position, whether it's pulling your legs further up closer to your chest or your torso, or whether it's simply holding the legs down towards the floor. The other thing that the arms do is to stabilize or manipulate the upper body while in this posture. In any spinal twist, we need opposition of movement of the lower pelvic body is twisting in one direction and the upper shoulder girdle and chest is stabilized or twisted in the opposite direction. That is the basis of any spinal twist. Now, while you're in this posture, you have 5 minutes. And so there's plenty of time to relax, to breathe deep, to feel your body in a certain pose or alignment. And then as your body changes over time, which it will, particularly in the first minute or two, to adjust yourself subtly deeper. And to assist you in the explorations of the tensions and the manipulations of your body, there are 3 basic arm positions you want to explore. One of which is to take the left arm of your body in this pose and stretch it way up, straight up alongside the head or the ear, as if you were reaching and extending and trying to get greater length on that side of your body and your rib cage. You might even turn your head away from that arm to exaggerate the ability to lift and to feel and to stretch into that part of your body. And this is typical of yin. It is primarily a muscular effort that you are making when you play with the arm position. It is primarily a muscular pleasing sensation to squeeze and relax the musculature of the arms and the upper back and the shoulder blades. So this is definitely a yang type of pose or a yang type of effort. But even though the upper body, the arms, the torso, the waist, are being affected in a yang way, the lower body is maintaining its yin orientation. We have not changed the twist, the longitudinal stresses and twisting torques that this posture, twisted roots, induces into the pelvis and the spine. So the upper body is being pleasantly and gently engaged in a yang practice, but the lower body, the spine and the pelvis and the legs, are deeply involved and continuously involved in a yin endeavor. The other arm positions to explore are to bring your arms straight down and out to the side. This is the typical, natural, instinctive positioning of the arms because of how it maximizes the twist or the stabilization of the upper body. This tends to exaggerate the twist of the upper body most effectively. This is typically where people will bring their arms in the beginning. A variation of this principle, what sort of involves the stretches of both these arm positions, is to place your hand behind your head, thinking to pull the arm or the elbow up or open to the floor. This enables both types of effects on the body. It stretches the arm, the shoulders, it forces an engagement, a pleasant squeezing and contraction of the muscles of the upper back, and at the same time it lifts and stretches the torso as if we were elongating. These are the basic arm positions to explore. The primary focus of the posture, however, is the effect it's having on your pelvis, your sacrum, and your lumbar spine. By no means endeavor to distract yourself or make yourself uncomfortable as you explore for the most comfortable arm position. Once you find a position that works for you, quiet your mind, close your eyes, and feel your body yield bit by microscopic bit to the traction and the rotation of this pose. And slowly now, release your leg position. Swing your legs down to a relaxed position, pausing for a moment to feel how deeply that very simple pose affects you when you stay there long enough. And this is the essence of a yin practice. Yin poses tend to be very simple. They are not contortions. They tend to be within the range of even most beginners. So it's not the effort, it's not the intensity of effort. It is the patient endurance of a modest stretch that gives Yin its power and that keeps it safe and non-aggressive. So continuing to the opposite side, you draw both knees up and cross your right leg this time over the left. Once again, there's no need to cross the ankles. And slowly lift and twist those knees over to your left side. And again, particularly in the beginning, as you're first approaching the pose, you might want to use your arm in some way to position your legs. Typically, your arms are used one of two ways or both. Holding the knees down, which exaggerates the rotation. It takes some time for the fascia and the muscles to completely yield to the stresses, so sometimes those knees are floating in the air. And so just the lightest of pressure, unforced, holding your knees down, keeps you comfortable. And as you feel the body yield, with time, it's not necessary to do that anymore. The other way the arm might assist you to feel your way into a more pleasant and effective position of twisted roots is to use that to help draw your knees higher up towards your rib cage and the axis of your body. And this is typically how that arm is used. The opposite arm we explored in depth on the other side. Do you stretch it straight out to the side in order to stabilize the upper body? Do you stretch the arm over your head to elongate and reach as if yawning and stretching? And then a combination of the two would be to bring the arm behind your head, your hand, and to pull the elbow up or open to the side. In 5 minutes' time, you have the time, if you wish, to explore any and all of those arm variations. I'm not inviting you to unnecessarily fidget when you do your postures. This is distracting and unnecessary. But as the body yields to the forces of the pose, it is normal and natural every 60 seconds or 90 seconds, perhaps once or twice during the 5 minutes that you're in a long yin pose, to feel the urge to adjust yourself to a slightly different or deeper place. And there's no reason why you shouldn't follow that urge. Certainly, we don't want to fuss and fidget and squeeze and bend and contract the entire time. But it's a natural thing to feel when your body wants or is able to move to a deeper place than how you started. And there's no need to inhibit yourself from exploring those places as they become available to you. So you might start with your arm in one position, and after a minute or two, move your arms or your legs to a slightly different position. And the same is true with the neck and the head and the torso. The most important thing is to feel your way into your pelvis and your lower spine. These are the deepest blind spots in our proprioceptions of our body. The pelvis, the sacrum, and the lower spine. Typically, we are unaware of them until something goes wrong, until there's a twinge of pain or fatigue. What we would like is to be able to feel very clearly the condition of our bones, the tensions in our muscles and our fascia, to feel them unwind. Coordinating this introspection with your breath is a natural thing. Sometimes drawing a breath and exhaling completely and deeply enables you to feel and move and squeeze your sensations into a different part of your spine. At other times, it is the opposite. Drawing a half-full breath, holding your breath, and then tensing the muscles of the rib cage and the abdomen, you can squeeze and feel and manipulate your ribs, your vertebra, and the sternum, the breastbone. These types of yang muscular contractions and isolations apply to virtually all of the yin poses. There is not a yin pose where every part of the body is engaged in a relaxed elongation. In virtually all of the postures of our repertoire, Some part of the body is engaged in a relaxed yielding to the stresses of a yin pose, while other parts of the body are free to engage in these muscular contractions, elongations, and explorations. The only important thing to remember is not to become distracted by these muscular movements, but try to limit yourself to those movements of how they deepen the primary intention of a pose. And the primary intention of this pose is not the arms and the upper body. The primary intention of this pose is the pelvis, the sacrum, and the lower spine. And now slowly unwind. Unwind the spine. No rush, no hurry. Step one leg out and then the other, very gently. And just feel. An important part of Yin Yoga is to take the time to feel a pose. It is normal and natural to feel fragile and vulnerable and want to hug the knees to the chest or roll to the side or do anything to relieve this sort of sense of I've been pulled apart. But before you do that, try to just lie still. Try to feel the bones. Try to relax the instincts of the body to contract and to resist. And see if you just can't mentally, emotionally, physically just fall apart and yield. For just a moment, don't try to hold yourself together. So now we prepare ourselves for a very deep and powerful stretch of the spine. First with the baby feet pose, and then with the head cradle. The baby feet is just like it sounds. You bring the feet up, much like an infant might, soles of the feet together, taking hold of the feet. We try to pull and stretch the lower spine. So whereas an infant might be trying to stick their toes in the mouth, this is really not our intention in this pose. Legs bent or nearly straight at many and numerous possible angles. The legs are levers by which we pull the tailbone and the lower spine off of the floor. This is a strong and powerful rounding traction of the spine. Whatever grip you need to accommodate that most easily, please adapt it. Whether it's both hands on the feet, hooking the elbows over the feet sometimes and grabbing opposite elbows. And again, don't endeavor to stay necessarily perfectly symmetrical. If you fall first to one side and hold it there, and then when ready, fall to the other side, usually this makes it easier to stretch to newer and deeper places because you're not endeavoring to balance at the same time. And again, the emphasis is not so much the legs in baby feet pose. The emphasis is to use the legs as a lever to take the lower spine into a deep, long curl. And now, transition to the hinge. Bring your hands under your hips again. And engage now the muscles of the abdominal wall, bringing the head to exaggerate that contraction. And slowly lower them down. And this is the opposite effort of pulling your back apart. This is a strong, vigorous effort to hold your spine together. And then relax. The contrast of yin and yang. Yin, let your bones be pulled apart. Yang, vigorously resist and stabilize the joints from being pulled. And then the head cradle, placing the fingers behind the neck or the skull, whatever feels most comfortable. Bring your elbows in and gently pull the head up off the floor, stretching the base of the skull and the length of the neck. It's very important not to jerk here and move aggressively. Sometimes people, when they become fatigued and do sit-ups, they grab their head to make it easier, and they sometimes slightly injure themselves. They can pull so aggressively. So by all means, don't jerk yourself around. But you can go left or right, gently testing the waters, preparing the musculature on each side of the spine, and particularly the large ligamentum nuchum that runs down straight down the spinal processes. If you engage the muscles of the abdomen, you can pull yourself fairly high off the ground, stretching and rounding and preparing the muscles not just of the neck, but of the upper spine as well. And then slowly down and relax, please. So we've prepared the spine by first twisting it, and then we stretch the lower spine. Now we've stretched and prepared the upper spine and the neck. Now a big climactic movement to complete rounding and elongation of the back of the spine, much like how we developed in the womb before the curves of the spine were developed. And this is snail pose. So engaging the musculature, bring the legs all the way up and over your head. More flexible people will be able to bring their feet to the floor rather easily, but this is not something you want to rush. Certainly, I hope it is obvious just by looking at this posture, and certainly when you do or try to practice this posture, you can generate a lot of stresses in the connective tissue and muscles of the upper spine and neck vertebra. Now, to an advanced practitioner who is unhurried, relaxed, and flexible from their training, this is a very pleasant posture to do. But even they will take their time. The weight of the body is a strong lever, and the length of the legs makes it even stronger. So to be too hurried or too aggressive in trying to bring your legs over and stress and elongate the back of the neck and its muscles on each side is not a good idea ever. Take your time. You have plenty of time. 5 minutes of time, actually. Now, the biggest variation when you bring your legs up over your head are, do you bend your knees or straighten your knees? Some people like the legs straight because it carries them over more easily. Some people like the knees bent because they can actually drop to a deeper, more intense stretching of the upper spine and the neck. Coupled with the leg position is the arm position. Do you bring your arms over your head so that you can take hold of your calves or your feet or the back of your knees so you feel that you can control and can stabilize how the pelvis and the legs swing in this pose? Or do you bring your arms down and behind your body? Some people prefer to bring their arms over their head because they like to feel that they can stabilize their movements. Other people bring their arms down and behind their body because they feel they can now use their arms and their shoulders to lift somewhat the weight out of the vertebrae that are pressed against the floor. There is no single one way to hold the arms or to hold the legs. With some experimentation, careful and slow and never being aggressive, you will find those positions you find most comfortable. For some people, they will find one arm and leg position that works for them. And they will always do this pose that way with good effect. For other people, it's as they do in the other postures of the Yin repertoire. For the first minute or two, they position their arms and legs in one position, and then as the body changes, and it takes you to a different place, in an unforced and uncontrived way, they take advantage of this newfound space and flexibility and adjust their arms or their shoulders or their head or their neck or their knees or their feet to a new position, to gently accommodate this new opening of the body. But the important thing is that they're not trying to force this to occur. Some days, the body moves and yields easily to the poses. In other days, even postures that you've done for a long time, postures you're intimately familiar with, don't yield to you the way they normally do. The muscles of the neck or the ligaments or the connective tissue simply resist the effort to be pulled or to be stretched. And here is the danger. The ego wants to step in and say, this is how far I should bend. Impressing its stubborn will on the body, injuries then occur. If the body doesn't yield some days, just passively, maturely, and unattachedly observe it. Maybe there's a reason for it. Rather than forcing the body to do what we imagine it should be able to do, simply reflect on what the body is doing. This is the difference between a yin and a yang attitude, both of which are appropriate at different phases. In the yang attitude, we wish to change what is to something different. In the yin attitude, it is a passive, non-invasive what is. In our practice of yoga, not only our postures must alternate in a yin and a yang approach, but the mental attitude. Sometimes I want to change how my body is shaped and formed. And other times, it's a simple, objective observation of how the body is at this moment. When you are ready, you might want to bring your hands down under your hips or control your descent by holding on to your legs. Either way, nice and easy, roll one vertebra and then another all the way down. And as your pelvis comes in contact with the floor, bend the knees so that you can relax and bring first one foot and then the other in an unhurried unwinding from the pose. And whenever you are ready, slowly walk first one foot out and then the other, laying flat. Once again, it is normal after doing a long and particularly vigorous, potentially stressful pose such as the snail pose. It is normal to feel your body want to contract, to feel aches and openings in the bodies and vulnerabilities that we immediately want to close in on, contract and stabilize. This is a normal and self-protective instinct. It's a good thing. But in a safe and controlled environment, in a safe and steady practice, don't always rush to hold yourself together again. Try to patiently, calmly, just feel. Is it your muscles that you feel? Is it your ligaments in your spine that you feel? Is it your bones that you feel? Is it the blood pressure that's changing from what was in your head and your throat, distributing evenly through the body? Just feel without fear. Done within limits and within reason, as difficult and stressful as some of these poses can be, their intention is to eventually rebuild the body stronger and more elastic. If we are not too aggressive, if we're not egotistically aggressive, the body constantly yields and improves to our efforts. And now the counter stretch to this, a twisting back bend. If you would slowly draw your left leg up, raise it high, and push it over to the right side, rotating the spine and the pelvis. Raise your head up and balance your head on the palm of your hand. And then put your toes on the floor and move that thigh back, move that hip back. That's the key to the cattail. Moving the hip and the thigh backwards. Once you've managed that, reach back, catch hold of the foot, grabbing the foot, any comfortable grip on the inside or the outside. And now you explore two possible major variations of the cattail. One, do you stay in the posture that you're in now, pulling the foot and the heel of the foot in towards your buttocks to exaggerate the stress on the hip flexors and the quadricep of the thigh? This is a very pleasant and effective stretch for a lot of people. For other people, it hardly affects them. Their innate flexibilities make this a very easy posture for them to achieve. For that populace, they might choose to do the second variation of cattail, which is to no longer support your head on your hand, but to actually pull and drop the head back, extending the arm and the bent leg away from the body. Dropping back slowly into a slightly arched twist of the spine. Freeing the head and the neck. Explore the motions of the head or the neck, however you feel comfortable, because this is our first opportunity to stretch and move the neck again after the deep, long traction of the snail pose. So sometimes a nice, vigorous contraction of the back of the neck, arching the head back, and then releasing that muscular contraction and effort feels particularly good after having done the snail pose just previous to the cattail pose. When doing back bends, and this is a back bend, when doing back bends in Yin Yoga, you can engage the muscles of the spine and in no way inhibit the Yin effect. In fact, you can possibly exaggerate the Yin effect. So unlike the general rule where you want to relax the muscles around a joint, the anatomy of back bends is such that if you wish to, you can at any time engage and squeeze the muscles between your shoulder blades, try to twist the spine a little more aggressively, squeezing and arching the muscles of the chest by lifting the rib cage. It is not necessary to engage in these contractions or explorations. But if you are so inclined by the movement and the feel of the energy of your body, you need not inhibit yourself, because these muscular efforts actually increase the effect of the poses, or at the very least, they do not inhibit the openings that can occur. And now just release your grip, relax your legs, let them extend back to an easy, natural position as you roll back onto your spine. And then we'll do the cattail pose on the opposite side. Drawing the right leg up this time. Use that leg to extend and rotate your pelvis over as far as you feel comfortable. Then use your toes and move that thigh back. That's the key to the cattail. Moving the thigh that's on the floor, moving it back. That isolates the hip flexors and the quads. Once you're there, you can support your head with your hand as before and bend the knee up, catching hold of the foot with any grip that feels comfortable. And then you can explore first the variation of the quadricep isolation, where you pull or push the foot in towards your buttock to exaggerate the stretch on the quadricep and the hip flexors. And when you do this, you might play with pushing that foot in or out rather than just pull it, to isolate different muscular positions of the quadricep. This is a perfectly valid exploration of where are the tensions. If you were massaging your body, you wouldn't automatically and always do it the same way each time. In general, yes, and generally it's the same pose each time. But each day's tensions, each day's restrictions, each day's little ginks and contractions that occur from living are slightly different. And slight movements of the body help us to find and isolate and relieve ourselves of those tensions. The other variation of the cattail, which you might choose to do at any time in your practice, is to let the leg be kicked away from you, extending and reaching with that arm, and you fall back into a gentle, arching spinal twist. And remember, the anatomy of the spine is such that if you wish to engage and squeeze the muscles of the spine on occasion and then relaxing to a different or to a deeper place, this will not inhibit the effect of the yin postures on the muscles and connective tissues of the spine and the pelvis. The intention of the cattail posture is to first neutralize and then take the spine into an opposite direction of the stresses of the long forward bends. All postures have a beneficial effect on the body, but all postures at the same time antagonize the body in some way. Doing forward bends all the time would eventually be very wearing on the body and fatiguing and injurious to the spine. The same would be true of backward bending, if that's all we did. The same would be true of spinal twisting, if that's all we did. So after a long and powerful spine exploration of forward bends, the cattail is a nice introduction to a deeper exploration of the spine in backward bends. And slowly unwind, please, releasing the grip, rolling back onto your back. Just for a moment, pause, but not long. This is now the transition, retracing the steps of an infant, wiggling and waggling around on its back and waving its arms and its legs and inadvertently stretching its hips and its pelvis and its spine. Big day arrives when I can flip myself over on my stomach on my crib. And now different measures of stress are placed upon the spine. An infant has no cervical or lumbar curves. It is difficult for an infant to arch its back or raise its head. And this is the area that we're going into. So if you would slowly just rotate over onto your belly, we will explore somewhat the strength and the muscular and the flexibilities of the spine that are required for us to go from a curved over infant spine to an adult spine with various curves. First, it's a very strong muscular effort, appropriately enough called the infant pose. The arms go back and the chest comes up. The feet can be apart, the knees can be bent or straight, whatever gives you the easiest, most powerful, natural contraction of the buttocks and the spine. This is a powerful movement for an infant. It actually doesn't have curves like this. To lift its head even a little, or to lift its torso even a little, demands a lot. And because this is young, we don't need to hold it for a long time. Slowly come down. If in your own practice you desire more vigorous practice, it isn't necessary to hold it for a long time, though you might choose to do so. Doing repetitions works very well. But for us, this infant for now is just a preparation for the deeper joint bending of the seal pose. You bring your hands, palms forward, somewhere near your shoulders. Exactly where varies from person to person because of their different proportions and flexibilities. But some experimentation should find a hand position for you by which when you elevate your torso, when your arms are extended, you are fairly comfortable carrying your weight. If this is too much, and this is too much stress for some people, if extending the arms completely is too much stress, then the variation of this pose is to drop down into your forearms. This way you don't extend and push into the spine so aggressively. Many people use this variation, if not as their permanent practice, as a gentle preparation for the deeper seal pose when both arms are extended and the torso is lifted and pressed back to its full comfortable extent. Once again, your legs can be a comfortable width apart. You need not contrive to hold them at any particular width. And the question always comes up, do I squeeze my butt and my thighs or do I not? A simple experiment will tell you, and everybody is different. Some people, when they squeeze their butt and or their thighs, they feel their spine is protected or supported. They feel they can hold the posture much longer and more comfortably. And for other people, it's exactly the opposite. The reasons for this we can't divulge now because this is not an anatomy DVD. But the bones of the pelvis and the hips are different. And the very same muscles in two different people can have differing effects on the body. So for some people, the buttocks, the thighs are relaxed. It gives them an easy, comfortable stress. For other people, it contracted. Your own experience and your own experiments will determine for you how you wish to do this or any other pose in the repertoire. What works for one person will not necessarily work for another. The other major variation to consider are your shoulders elevated, easy riding up, shoulders towards the ears? Are the muscles engaged in such a way that the scapula and the shoulders are depressed down and away from the ears? Some people prefer to just hang from their shoulders, shoulders up. Other people prefer to squeeze and contract and control their body position. Either position will not interfere with the yin effects of this pose on the lumbar spine. This posture is about creating or recreating the lumbar curve. The process similar to what every infant had to do, because no infant is born with a cervical curve or a lumbar curve. These are developed through our activities. And by maintaining this activity safely and gently, hopefully we can delay or prevent this curve from degenerating, which is so common in our culture. And slowly, slowly lower yourself down. And you can push yourself back into child's pose to relax the stresses of the spine. Child's pose is a very gentle opposite motion to seal pose. Many people are terrified of stretching and bending their lower spine and their pelvis. This is understandable. We're frightened of it. We don't know it. We don't notice it. And we usually don't pay any attention to it until something terribly bad happens. In yoga, we're trying to stimulate the life force of the body to rebuild and rehabilitate our bones in various ways. And the tissues and bones of the lower spine are like every other tissue of the body. If we patiently, sanely, gently, and maturely exercise them by slowly stressing them in various ranges of motion, they will stay young and healthy. And if they have degenerated, they will regenerate. We now come to the more vigorous of the infant's movements. To develop the strength of the abdomen and hip flexors and legs it takes to crawl and to eventually to walk takes a lot of strength, particularly when you don't have curves in your spine yet. So the first of these strong movements is the camel pose. Although not a position that an infant would get into, it's a very effective strengthening of the muscles that an infant has to go through. So either standing up on your toes to make it easier to grab the feet, take a nice comfortable width of your knees. The wider the knees, the easier it will be. Try to reach back first with one hand and then the other, keeping your chin up in the beginning. Tighten up your buttocks and press the thighs forward. An infant has no strength to do this in the beginning, could not hold themselves in this position. It needs to struggle and struggle and struggle and struggle to develop the strength necessary to do what you're doing. So even though this is not a posture an infant would do, the muscles that it's strengthening, we adults need to do to regain and to refeel what it takes to move into balance and to stabilize our bodies. If your neck becomes fatigued, you can drop your head back and press your pelvis forward. And by all means, if this is too strenuous and difficult for you, don't try to hold it for a long time. And then slowly release. Bring your pelvis forward, bring your chin forward, and gently go down and place your hands on the floor. And relax a little bit your back in child's pose. So now we move into the bear pose. Coming up on hands and knees, any comfortable width and angle. Some experimentation will tell you what. You go into barrel rolls, so to speak, with the hips and the torso and the spine. Great oblong or elliptic circles, first one direction and then the other. Bending the elbows and moving the arms at any comfortable angle. Typically, beginners keep their arms a little too close together, which inhibits their shoulder movement. So you might explore with a wider posturing of the hands, so it's easier to dip and move the chest down close to the floor as you circle first one way and then the other. You can explore lateral bends. And then finally, you can arch the head up and push the rib cage down, or push the head down and arch the rib cage up. These are all variations of the bear. Very basic fundamental strength an infant must develop to be able to support itself as it crawls, because the spinal muscles and the abdominal muscles have to have a certain minimal amount of strength before standing is even possible. And then the exaggeration of this is about to come up. The strength of the core of the body, front and back side, erector spinae muscles and abdominal muscles, is strengthened to the maximum in the crocodile. You place your forearms on the floor. That'll be your feet. Stretch your legs back behind you till you're balanced only on your toes. Now, within a certain range of motion, you can arch your butt up a little higher than normal, or you can bring your hips down very close to level. But don't fall too much into an arch of the back. You're really moving from straight or tucked with no arch in the spine to lifting the hips up, exaggerating them slightly above the level of the head. Moving from one of these positions to the other is working the same muscle groups of the body. This is pretty much what an infant feels like when it's trying to develop for the very first time. How do I hold the top and bottom halves of my body together as I try to stand? Something we've forgotten, but this pose reminds us the upper and lower parts of the body are connected primarily by muscular strength, which is why we cannot allow our abdominal muscles to deteriorate or we take too much stress on the spine. Slowly down, please. And go to your hands, palms, and push back into downward dog. This doesn't take nearly the abdominal strength of the crocodile. This is an opportunity now to stretch the ankles, the knees, and the back, so you can tread your feet as you wish. You can move and wiggle your hips around from side to side. You can lift your head. You can turn your head. You can push and press into your shoulders asymmetrically, first one side and then the other. It's not a yin pose, it's a yang pose. And yang is about training the nerves and the muscles in a variety of movement. The more variety of movement, the better for the nervous system, the healthier the muscles of the body. So in yang movements, it's not about stillness and exactitude. It's about the possibility and the capability for safe and controlled movement in a variety of positions. Finally now, walk the feet all the way up. You can have any modest width of your feet that you prefer, from together to 2 or 3 feet apart, all of which are variations of the elephant pose, the stiff-legged elephant pose. So a modest, moderate width of the feet, whatever feels most comfortable. The biggest variations here are, do you rock the weight back onto your heels, stretching up into the attachments of the leg muscles more by the buttocks into the bone of the ischium? Or do you rock the weight forward onto the balls of the feet, stretching the lower attachments of the hamstrings and the calves? Both legitimate variations, rocking the weight back onto the heels or forward onto the balls of the feet. And you needn't lock your legs out completely and solidly, certainly not for the entire time that you're in the pose. We're not trying to exercise their joints to their full range anymore. We're trying to move the blood and the qi, developing the strength of the legs. So a complete extension of the legs and the joints is not necessary. Slight movements of the pelvis and the spine is certainly legitimate. The final movement now is the infant is going to roll itself up to a standing position. The muscles of the spine holding it erect. And for here on out, it's not strength that challenges an infant, it is balance and coordination. And so in an effort to try to recreate challenges to balance and coordination, we do the morning stretch, lacing the fingers, palms together. Turn the palms upward, lift and extend yourself. If you wish to challenge your balance, you drop your head back. Otherwise, take an object on a wall or on the floor to focus upon and lift up and twist to your right. You can raise the heel of the left foot if you wish, and lift and reach and arch and extend, challenging your balance and your awareness in space. And then changing to the other side. Turning and twisting to the left. Challenge your awareness and your balance in space by lifting, stretching, and twisting, even dropping your head back, which is the most challenging proprioceptive awareness of all. And then come back to the center. Twist one more time to the right, briefly lifting, stretching, yawning, and extending. And one more time to the left. And then at the end, we come back to center and gently lower the hands and close your eyes. And for just a moment, feel your body swaying. Your eyes are closed. Feel how much is going on inside. You can feel your pulse in many places of your body. You can feel it in your head, in your eyes, in your mouth, in your fingers, in your palms. You can even feel it in your legs, your belly. The body is pulsing and swaying all the time. But we have to be still, physically and mentally, to feel what a miracle of coordination it is that we can stand with all this stuff that we need to coordinate. And then finally, in gratitude, bring our hands, palms together, near your heart. Namaste.